What is the worst thing that has happened at a high school reunion party that you attended? Story 1. The people who were supposed to plan our high school reunion dropped the ball, so I figured it wouldn't happen. But then this other dude from our high school stepped up to plan it. He was in a graduate program and also working part-time at a banquet hall, and he said that his boss would give us the banquet hall space for free. It was a really nice gesture, and he seemed really into it. He had been miserable in high school, grumpy, sullen, unpleasant, mean to other people. He came out in college, so maybe the weight of having to keep it a secret was part of why he was so unpleasant. Maybe he'd be more fun now. I was working a crappy job and had no savings at the time, so I was neither interested in having my former classmates pity me, nor was I gunning to shell out a lot of money to attend. Plus, my annoying ex might be there, and that didn't feel worth it. The organizer made a Facebook event and asked people to Venmo him the cost of admission prior to attending. He wanted something like $15 to $20 per person. I can't remember. Anyway, I didn't really feel like paying for it. Maybe if there would be some drinks included or something, I would go for an hour. I sent him a private message asking what the admissions ticket covered. Food, drinks. The space was free after all. He posted publicly on the Facebook page that if the cost of admission was too steep, message me and we can work out some financial aid. What? I then publicly posted asking what the admission cost covered. No response. Other people asked too. He said it would go towards having a bartender and server dedicated to the event space, as well as towards food. Okay, fair. Folks, he was the server. My friend showed up having not yet paid him, and he barred her entry. The people who had paid the admission cost showed up to an empty banquet hall, were given a menu by their former classmate, and told to order their own food and drink from him. He pocketed the admission ticket money as his fee. After an hour, he brought out one grocery store sheet cake for 75 people to share. That was it. Story 2. Not mine, but my husband's. 10-year anniversary for high school graduates. The whole thing was really just sloppily slapped together, and it was pretty clear the class was not interested in getting together. The gathering place kept changing every couple weeks. This was updated via Facebook group, by the way. At first, it was renting a place and getting food catered and whatnot, except it's pretty typical in my town for most people not to go on to be successful by any means. So asking mostly unemployed or minimum wage workers to cough up, I think, $200 to attend just didn't work out. Venues kept downgrading to accommodate until they got down to having a bonfire out by the lake. BYOB, no fee. Just come hang out for like an hour or something. Throughout the fiasco of finding a venue, a majority of the class declined going. Some had to change status. There were a good handful still marked as going, but with everything changing and people obviously starting to tune out midway through, a lot of people forgot to change their status of going to not going. 2 people showed up, that was it. One was my brother, who had nothing better to do anyway. Another guy that sort of helped put the crap show together showed up. The gal that set the whole thing up was pretty mad about it, and the random dude that helped posted a long rant on Facebook about how awful people were and how they should have appreciated the efforts it took just to hold the pathetic gathering. My husband had me sit and flip through the page after everything was said and done. It was pretty obvious the gal was in serious denial the entire time, despite it being pretty clear nobody wanted anything to do with the event. I laughed at the rant, then honestly forgot about it until I saw this thread. Story 3. Can't say it is the worst thing, just a general observation. My class has been excellent about having reunions every 5 years. Our 8th installment is not too far off. They are very well attended and enjoyable. You can see who has been ravaged by years of drug or alcohol abuse. The ones who have let themselves go physically, I'm not talking being a few pounds overweight, some folks put in no effort to be hygienic in general. Then there are the people who realize too late that when you treat people like crap, no one wants to be around you anymore. There are braggers and big deals from high school who kept it going through the first few reunions. New cars, talking about their big houses and endless vacations. They don't talk crap anymore. They've maxed out their credit cards long ago and live life on borrowed time and money. Some have just given up and you can see it. I found that to be profoundly sad. We're all too young to do that. On the other hand, I see some old friends with a regular cadence. We catch up, get the lowdown on each other's families, and talk fondly about a 4-year stretch of time that happened long ago. Story 4. The class officers did a 5-year reunion on Thanksgiving weekend at a local bar. They only invited who they liked, 30 to 40 people. One of the people they didn't invite had become a police officer who talked his supervisor into running a DUI checkpoint. Almost half the people who went ended up going to jail that night. 2 of the organizers ended up with drug charges as well as DWIs. The 10-year started off better, but still ended up deciding to go with a picnic to the same place we had our senior picnic. One of the class officers had started a catering company and gave themselves the job. About 1/3 of the people ended up with food poisoning. Thankfully, COVID caused our 20-year to be canceled. Story 5, I went to my reunion despite high school having been horrible for me. I was the self-conscious girl who was pretty jumpy when someone would talk to me. I've long grown out of that, so I figured why not go and see who I can talk to now. I spent the night talking with some people who I never talked with because of the whole high school cliques thing. It was a great time, and then someone decided they were going to get blind drunk. He started a fight with another guy for no reason, and the two of them crashed into me and we all fell over into a table, breaking it in the process. I didn't break anything, thank God for being chubby. But I had some pretty intense bruising along my torso and hips. I also had a bruise going across my right cheekbone. The cops were called and the drunk dude got arrested. The guy he picked a fight with was taken in as well, although not under arrest, and I was sent to the hospital. I had to take time off work for a few days and learned how to apply concealing makeup since I worked in customer service then. The drunk guy's wife was nice enough to pay me back for my hospital bill, though. Story 6. I was one of the first recipients of an alumni scholarship from the class of 1999, and for their 20th reunion, the guy who organized the scholarship reached out and asked me to come as his guest to give a speech encouraging people to donate. I live about an hour away now, but I felt pressured and thought, sure, after all, I got the benefit, why not pay it forward? He also pressured me into making a symbolic donation of $10. That's not nothing to me. Wrote a speech, practiced, wrote note cards. Show up at this hotel, and the party is in the front lounge, swarming with people 10 years older than me. I find the guy, he starts introducing me and explaining what I do now, but he gets it wrong every time. Ask him when I'm going to speak. He says later and tells me to enjoy the food. It's all meat. I don't eat that. Disappears. By random chance in this sea of people having, a reunion. I ran into a guy who worked for my old community theater. I cling desperately to him so I'm not alone. He probably wants to, reune. But instead, he's talking to me for an hour. Find the guy. Ask him when I'm going to speak. He says soon. I ask where. I'm going to speak. I've just realized there's no stage and the party is spread all over the lobby. He points to where the DJ is and where everyone's pictures from high school are playing on a screen. Excellent backdrop slideshow of memories behind a girl no one knows or particularly cares about. Another hour passes. It's time for the group picture. Everyone herds over. I stay nearby to be ready. I am among the spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends. They ask who I'm there with. I say I'm giving a speech. They ask when. I say soon. At an adjacent party, a band starts playing. Very loud. People are shouting to be heard. It dawns on me that I may not give my speech. I go find the guy, ask, smirking when I'm going to give my speech. He says, utterly guileless, that it looks like I don't have to, but he hopes I had fun. I get home at midnight from someone else's high school reunion with my unused speech in my purse. Haven't heard from him since. Story 7. Not me, but a high school reunion that I waited on in a restaurant. It's about 20 ladies, and there's one woman who is kind of odd, but nice. She orders a glass of wine, but no food, and I'm not really paying too much attention, but all of a sudden she is gone. The women are reassuring themselves that they did nothing wrong, and it was no one's fault. When it's about time to pay bills, I have hers, but she's still MIA. The women look surprised and say, "She's not still here?" I finally found her in the bar by herself. She pays the bill along with her bar tab and leaves really awkwardly. Turns out that what happened is that she accidentally got put on the email list for the class reunions and showed up even though it wasn't her class. When the woman asked which Debbie she was because no one could remember her, she got really upset and stormed off. The woman said she didn't even have a Facebook picture on her profile or anything, so when they tried to look her up, that didn't help either. And the weirdest part is that she did this at the last reunion too, the exact same thing. Story 8. My 10-year and my husband's 10-year were both the same weekend. We decided to do this because it was well organized and looked like fun. Plus, we hadn't been back there in quite some time. They hired a little party boat to cruise around a lake for 2 hours. Prior to that, they had a meetup across from the lake for lunch and a happy hour bar hop. The festivities started around noon, boarding was at 10, and everything was supposed to be over at midnight except those that wanted to do an after party. Problem 1, the lake they picked was 45 minutes away from the area they all lived. People had to find their own rides, which was a bit of an issue since many didn't have vehicles. Eventually, most people that wanted to come were able to carpool. However, a couple cars were pulled over on the way because they had been pre-gaming and shouldn't have been driving, or the passengers were throwing empties out on the highway. Yes, this was in the middle of the afternoon. Problem 2, lunch and happy hour were the responsibility of the individuals. Not everyone believed they should pay, so some people ran up tabs in the name of the school's class of 2005 reunion and then ghosted. The restaurant and bars got super angry and started stopping any patrons that said they were there for a reunion and held them until cops came, even though some of those people didn't add to the tabs. We thankfully arrived late because we had dinner with some of his friends and only went to the last bar on the list. We had already paid for the drinks we had, so we dipped before they rounded us up too. I heard eventually some of those places were trying to sue the school to get their money. Next, the boat. It wasn't huge. It had a main enclosed area, a small deck on both the front and back, connected by a very narrow single-file gangway on either side of the boat, an even smaller standing-only area on the roof, maybe 3 people at a time, and a small sublevel that was strictly off-limits. There was 1 bathroom for each gender. Everyone upon boarding was already pretty tipsy. The cruise was split up, so the first 30 minutes were like, where are they now? Then an hour was unlimited drinks and snacks with dancing and mingling. The snacks were baked goods that had been carried from venue to venue and were frosted in a vibrant bright blue, the school color. The drinks were bright pink. I'm pretty sure it was like pink lemonade powder, Sprite, and cheap vodka. Anyway, things started off a little awkwardly because the MC was one of those that was stopped for drunk driving. The second in command was held up at the bar, and the third person was already vomiting bright blue and pink over the side of the boat. Eventually, someone kicked it off and only fumbled about the dead people bad jokes that no one laughed about, so they got mad and quit. People then found a boombox, turned on music, and started mingling and eating more baked goods. We never touched them because I have celiac disease. Suddenly, a ton of people started getting sick. I'm talking like 30 of roughly 70 people. Not only were they puking, but it was coming out both ends for some. Remember there was only 1 bathroom for each gender? Yeah. Nightmare. We were at the furthest point on the lake by then, so it was going to take a while to get back. It was a mess. People were throwing up in whatever they could find, messing their pants or trying to find a corner. The captain only had 1 person on board trying to help, but it was a losing battle. Since that was in the enclosed space, the rest of us tried hanging out on the decks to try to get away from the smell and the noise, so we're all scrunched together. I'd gotten separated from my husband, but was chatting with people I'd met earlier through him, when a guy came up and started being like, I don't remember your name, but I'd never forget your beautiful face, kind of thing. Jokingly, I was pretending to be shocked and said we'd been in the same classes since kindergarten and we even dated in junior high, etc. The people I talked to were playing along, all saying they're surprised he doesn't remember me, that I was even prom queen. The guy says he is going to get us all apology drinks and then disappears. By then, my husband found us and brought more drinks and is telling us about this guy that's bragging to anyone who will listen, about how he's taking home this hot chick. We all just kind of laughed it off, saying several other people said something similar about their spouses too, drank the drinks and started dancing because someone brought the boombox outside. While my husband is grinding on me, out of nowhere, the guy from before materializes and starts telling my husband to get off his woman. He then grabs me and is saying something about finding a space of our own when we're all yelling at him that it's my husband and he needs to back off. The guy puffs up like he's going swing, then goes weirdly quiet and apologizes, says no hard feelings, and passes out the drinks. It was pretty awkward, so he disappeared again. I have a couple sips and go back to dancing for a bit when I start to feel funny. I tell everyone I need to get some air and start walking down the side of the boat where there's less people. Then I start feeling really dizzy and nauseated. I saw a girl pop out from the enclosure further down and I remember saying something was wrong, but she didn't seem to hear before disappearing. I was trying to use the railing to stay upright and walk back when someone should appear but a drunk, creepy guy. He said something I don't really remember, but his face was so scary. I'll never forget that face. I turned away from him and almost fell over the railing because my body was not cooperating. He started pulling me by my arms down the boat to where the entrance to the sublevel was, and I was basically a rag doll. I could hardly move. The last thing I remember thinking was that I should grab something or yell something, but nothing was working properly. I believe I passed out right around then. It's really lucky I did because they think that going full dead weight caused him to stumble, fall, and hit the back of his head, knocking him out. When I came to, I was inside a hospital. The girl that I saw went to find someone who knew me, and when they found me, the guy was bleeding from his head, and I was turning blue. I was having seizures and had choked on my own vomit. The hospital told me I was drugged with GHB. They wound up keeping me an entire day because I was also covered in hives and they weren't sure why. The creep also went to the hospital for some serious damage to his face and crotch that occurred before police arrived, and over half the people on the boat had contracted norovirus from suspected contaminated baked goods. Creep was eventually charged with a whole host of things, pleaded down, was sentenced to 18 months, and only wound up serving about 9 weeks because of overcrowding. If he hadn't been allowed to plead down a couple felony charges, he would have been in prison for 50 years, supposedly. So that's the criminal justice system for you. Basically, I'll never attend any kind of reunion again, and I avoid going back there whenever possible. Story 9 was forced to leave a McDonald's and was almost arrested under suspicion of being a terrorist. I was attending my 20th high school reunion with my, at the time, girlfriend. I apparently am a person of color. Never really crossed my mind until everyone decided to make that a thing. And my girlfriend was Persian and dark-complected. We had driven about 120 miles to get to the reunion in my hometown, and stopped into a McDonald's before we got there. I needed to change clothes into something a little less comfortable while she waited in the lobby and ate whatever American food was to her liking. Well, apparently an Iranian woman can't just sit in the lobby and have a Big Mac or chicken nuggets or whatever without raising an eyebrow or two. And her darkish complected boyfriend can't walk into a bathroom with a suit bag and spend 10 minutes or so changing clothes without literally being told to leave by the kid with the shift manager hat on. We were told to leave, that they had called the police and reported me as suspected terrorists because I must have exceeded the bathroom time limit while being the wrong shade of brown. They literally thought I was putting a bomb in the bathroom to blow up the restaurant. I thought it was the funniest thing I had ever heard. My girlfriend and I had actually only been back in the US for a few weeks from deployment in Afghanistan, yes, as the good guys, although I suppose that is subjective to one's point of view now, so I found it to be especially ironic. But the real kicker for me is that this wasn't just any McDonald's. This was the McDonald's that I actually used to work at many, many moons ago. It was my first real job, other than a paper route. I literally used to work there, and they kicked me out. We were still in town the next day, so I had a little chat with the store manager about it. I wasn't even pissed, but it was the principle of the matter. At least it made a good story at my reunion, which actually turned out to be pretty uneventful in itself. It's still a good story, though. Story 10, okay, my turn. Although I wasn't there to directly witness this, hearing about it was almost more unbelievable. So my best friend in high school had a string of, let's say, interesting relationships. Both of his major high school girlfriends turned out to be lesbian after they decided to break up. Now that's strange in itself, but more strange is how this all led up to our 5-year high school reunion. In a short 5 years, one of the lesbian exes moved to the other side of the country, joined the military, and shortly became dishonorably discharged. Figures. The other, however, stuck around our hometown and dated around. Well, in the months coming up to our graduation, we find out that both of my best friend's lesbian girlfriends had started dating each other. You could imagine all the crap they said about him as he had dumped both of them, and both breakups were pretty messy. Fast forward to our 5-year reunion, and it was a pretty good turnout, and everyone was having an okay, albeit awkward time. Turns out both lesbian ex-girlfriends came, and we were all shocked. My best friend and his exes are in the same room after not seeing each other for many years. It was someone's bright idea to have the reunion on Halloween night, so it was at this point that I dipped out and left for a rave, where I had planned to meet my best friend in a couple hours after he socialized some more with old friends. Not 2 hours later, I got a text from him with a photo of his face all cut up and bruised, and all it said was, "I'm going to be a little late to the party." I immediately call him in a shock and find out what could have happened at our harmless 5-year high school reunion. Turns out that the ex-girlfriend who was dishonorably discharged was upset at how poorly my friend treated her current girlfriend when they were in a relationship. To get revenge, I guess she thought it was appropriate to start a fistfight with him in the parking lot of the reunion as he was getting into an Uber to go to the rave. She came behind him and tackled him to the ground, drop-kicked him, and proceeded to kick him while he was down. Cops were called and she drove away drunk. He came to the rave an hour later with the cuts and contusions to prove it. Months later, she was eventually caught and was given an assault charge. Gotta love high school drama that lasts 5 years later.